Hi guys, welcome to Calm History Tales tonight. We are easing ourselves into the year 1789, and you are opening your eyes inside a country that technically exists but still feels unsure of itself. The room around you is dim even though morning has arrived, because sunlight has to fight its way through small glass panes that ripple and distort the world outside. The air smells faintly of ash, damp wood, and yesterday's food. You lie still for a moment listening. No traffic hums, no phone buzzes, just a rooster somewhere nearby, a wagon creaking in the distance, and the soft breathing of other people sharing your space. This is not a private bedroom. This is a shared survival pod. You stretch carefully because even waking up can hurt when your mattress is stuffed with straw that has flattened into stubborn knots. And here is your first gentle reality check. You probably won't survive this if you bring modern expectations with you. You are waking in America in 1789. The same year George Washington becomes the first president under the new Constitution that is the mainstream fact historians like to open with. But right now, lying here, the Constitution is not what you are thinking about. You are thinking about whether the fire from last night still has embers, whether the water bucket is full, and whether today's work will leave you just tired or properly exhausted. Political ideals live on paper. Your life lives in muscle bone and routine. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe. But only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And while you are here, tell me where you are listening from and what time it is there. Someone will be hearing this as the sun rises someone else as it sets, and that feels strangely fitting. Now dim the lights and let yourself sink into this morning with me. You sit up slowly. The ceiling above you is low beams, exposed, darkened by years of smoke. If you are in a town, maybe along the eastern seaboard, the house is wood-framed and narrow. If you are on the frontier, it might be a single-room log structure with gaps stuffed with clay and moss. Either way, space is precious. Privacy is rare. You dress where you sleep because there is nowhere else to go. Your body already knows its role. Even before your eyes are fully open, your mind is counting tasks. Fetch water, stoke the fire, feed animals, prepare food. In 1789, waking up is not a transition into leisure. It is a starting gun. People often went to bed shortly after dark and rose near dawn. Not because it was virtuous, but because candles cost money and darkness makes work impossible. Historians still debate whether early Americans actually slept better than we do, or if exhaustion simply forced unconsciousness. Regardless of comfort, you swing your feet onto the floor. It is cold. Floorboards are rough, sometimes unfinished, sometimes just packed earth. Slippers are a luxury. Shoes, if you own a decent pair, are stiff and already waiting by the door. You notice how quiet your body feels without notifications pulling at your attention. Thoughts move slower here. Time itself feels thicker. Somewhere nearby, someone coughs. Illness is always close. In 1789, even a mild infection can turn serious quickly. Doctors exist, but they are expensive, scarce, and armed with treatments like bloodletting and mercury. A quirky but true tidbit from the period is that people sometimes believed wearing dirty clothes could protect you from disease by blocking bad air. Cleanliness was not yet linked to health in the way we assume now. You pull on your clothes. They are simple, layered, and designed to last. Linen against the skin. Wool on top, even in warmer months, because wool resists dirt and wear. Buttons are precious. Fabric is precious. Nothing here is fast fashion. Every stitch represents time and labour, often done by hand in the evenings by firelight. If something tears, it is mended. If it wears out completely, it becomes rags. Those rags might later become paper. Even trash has a future. As you dress, you become aware of smells. Wood smoke clings to everything, so does sweat. Soap exists. But bathing is infrequent by modern standards. A full body wash might happen weekly or less depending on season and water access. This does not make people careless. It makes them practical. Clean enough is the goal. Perfection is not. You step outside or at least to the threshold. Morning air bites your face in winter. breath turns visible. In summer, humidity wraps around you like a damp blanket. Even before the sun climbs high, the sky is wide and feels closer somehow, as if there is less between you and the weather. Storms matter more here. A bad one can ruin crops, delay travel, or collapse poorly built structures. Weather is not small talk, it is planning. You hear animals before you see them. Chicken scratching, a cow lowing, a horse stamping. Even in towns, animals are everywhere. They provide transport, food, labour, and noise. Streets are not clean. Manure is part of the landscape. People step around it without comment. Smells layer themselves the way sounds do. In 1789, the population of the entire United States is just under 4 million people. That number includes enslaved individuals who make up roughly 1/5 of the population. This fact is not abstract here. Enslaved labour is visible in kitchens, fields, workshops, and docks, even if you are not directly involved. The economy around you is shaped by it. Everyday comfort for some rests on daily suffering for others. As the morning settles, you notice how little printed information surrounds you. Maybe a Bible, maybe a newspaper passed from hand to hand until it falls apart. News travels slowly, rumours travel faster. A quirky detail from the era is that some people learned about major events months late, and by the time the news arrived, it had already changed shape through retelling. You pause for a moment, hands busy, mind drifting. There is a sense of possibility in the air, but it is quiet and fragile. The revolution is over, but its promises are unfinished. People argue about taxes, representation, and power, but those debates happen around tables like this one, over meals that need to stretch and days that demand labour. Historians still argue whether ordinary Americans felt hopeful or simply relieved that war had ended. As the sun rises higher, the day begins to press forward. You feel it in your shoulders, already tensing for work. This is not a cinematic America of grand speeches and powdered wigs. This is an America of waking up cold dressing in the dark and stepping into a world that asks something from you immediately. And as you take that first breath of morning air, you realize that for all the talk of new beginnings, most people in 1789 are doing what humans have always done. They wake, they prepare, they endure, and they move forward one ordinary morning at a time. You move deeper into the house now, or maybe you simply turn around because there is nowhere deeper to go. Homes in 1789, America are not designed for comfort so much as survival. They are shelters, first once. Second, the walls around you feel close. Not emotionally, but physically. Rooms are small because smaller spaces are easier to heat. Ceilings are low because warm air should not escape upward. Windows are few because glass is expensive and fragile. Every design choice whispers the same message: waste nothing. If you are in a coastal town, your house might be part of a tight row, sharing walls with neighbours, you know by voice and smell. If you are inland, your home might stand alone, surrounded by cleared land and tree stumps like scars. Either way, the house feels handmade because it is. Nails are forged one by one, boards are cut by hand. Nothing here is perfectly straight, and nothing quite lines up. When the wind blows, the building responds with cacks and groans, as if it is alive and mildly irritated. You run your hand along a wall, the wood is rough, sometimes splintered paint, if present at all, is thin and uneven. Many interiors are left bare. Decoration is not a priority. Function is a shelf holds a few bowls. Pegs in the wall hold coats and tools. Furniture is sparse. A table, a bench, maybe a chest that serves a storage seat, and step all at once. Chairs with backs are not guaranteed. You sit where you can. The hearth dominates everything. This is the heart of the home in a very literal way. It provides heat, light, and a place to cook. You can smell yesterday's fire even when it is cold. A mix of ash and smoke that is soaked into the stone. Starting a fire each morning is a skill, not a button. You kneel arrange, kindling coax embers back to life if you are lucky. If not, you strike flint and steel and hope your hands are steady. Without fire, the house becomes hostile quickly. A mainstream historical fact often mentioned is that fireplaces were inefficient, losing much of their heat up the chimney. That inefficiency shapes your life. You cluster near the fire in winter, you dress in layers indoors, you accept that some rooms will remain cold and unused for months. Upper floors, if they exist, are often freezing. Sleeping downstairs near the hearth is common during harsh weather. You glance upward, smoke stains the beams, chimneys catch fire more often than anyone would like. That fear never fully leaves you. One stray spark, one neglected ember, and the house that took years to build can vanish in minutes. A quirky but very real detail is that some families kept buckets of water or sand permanently near the hearth, ready for emergencies, even though water itself was precious. Beds are simple frames, sometimes just ropes woven tight and topped with a mattress, stuffed with straw leaves or corn husks. Over time, the stuffing breaks down, shifting and poking. You sleep on uneven ground every night, and your body adapts. Blankets are heavy, often wool, sometimes itchy, sheets, if you have them, are linen and coarse. Comfort here is something you grow accustomed to, not something you expect. You notice how shared everything is. People sleep together not out of romance but necessity. Children pile into one bed. Guests share space without question, privacy. As you understand it, barely exists. Conversations are overheard. Arguments are public, even quiet. Thoughts feel exposed when walls are thin and rooms are crowded. Historians still argue whether this lack of privacy strengthened community bonds or simply normalized constant stress. Light is precious. During the day you rely on windows, small as they are. At night, candles and oil lamps come out sparingly. Candles are made of tallow if you are lucky. Beeswax if you are wealthy. Tallow smells unpleasant when it burns, a greasy animal odor that clings to hair and clothes. You trim wicks carefully to avoid wasting material. Every flame is money slowly disappearing. The floor beneath you tells another story. In some homes it is packed dirt, swept smooth each day. In others, wide planks leave gaps where cold air creeps up and small items vanish forever. Rugs are rare and valuable more often. The floor is bare and you learn where to step to avoid the colder spots. Storage is constant improvisation. Food hangs from rafters, tools rest in corners. Dried herbs, onions and meat are suspended from hooks to keep them away from animals. Even so, mice find their way in. Insects are unavoidable. You share your home with creatures whether you want to or not. Cats earn their keep. Dogs sleep near the door. You step outside again and look back at the structure. From a distance it blends into the landscape. Wood, stone and earth tones dominate. Bright colours are rare. Paint is expensive and vivid pigments even more so. Homes do not shout for attention, they endure quietly. In towns, fire is an even greater fear. Buildings stand close together. One blaze can sweep through entire streets. Volunteer fire brigades exist, but their tools are basic. Buckets, hooks, ladders. People form lines to pass water hand to hand. There is no guarantee help will arrive in time. Many towns have lost entire neighbourhoods this way. Everyone knows someone who has rebuilt from nothing. A fringe detail from the period is that some people believed hanging certain plants or symbols near the doorway could ward off fire or bad luck. Whether out of superstition or hope, these small gestures bring comfort in a world with limited control. As you move through the space, you feel how the house shapes your posture and pace. You duck instinctively under beams. You step carefully near the hearth. You slow down because rushing leads to injury. The home teaches you how to live in it. There is also a strange intimacy between people and their houses here. You know every sound it makes. You can tell from a creak whether the wind has shifted or the temperature has dropped. When rain comes, you listen for leaks. When winter deepens, you feel cold creeping through familiar scenes. The house is not separate from you. It is part of your daily awareness. The new nation is talking about liberty and rights, but your home reminds you that freedom is constrained by material reality. A drafty wall does not care about ideals. A leaking roof demands attention now, not after debate. Historians continue to debate how much the revolutionary rhetoric filtered into spaces like this. or whether it remained mostly a public language distant from domestic life. You finish checking the fire. You straighten what little there is to straighten. The house is awake now, breathing, waiting, outside. The day moves forward. Inside, you carry the quiet understanding that this structure, imperfect and fragile, is the thin barrier between you and a much harsher world. And with that knowledge settled into your bones, you step fully into the day ahead. You turn your attention to what covers your body, because clothing in 1789 is not about expression, it is about endurance. There is no closet to stand in. What you own is what you wear, and what you wear is what has survived. Garments are few, reused constantly, and repaired until the fabric itself gives up. You feel every layer as you move, because none of it is weightless. The first thing against your skin is linen. It is rough, but breathable, and it absorbs sweat better than wool. Linen shirts and shifts are washed more often than outer layers. Not because people are cleaner, but because washing heavy wool is labor-intensive and risky. Wool shrinks, felts, and can be ruined easily. So linen becomes the sacrificial layer, taking on dirt and sweat, so the rest can last longer. Over that, you pull on wool. Even in summer, wool remains common. It regulates temperature better than you would expect, but it itches, especially when damp. You adjust it with practiced movements. Buttons are small, sometimes mismatched, often carved from bone or wood. Metal is valuable. Losing a button is irritating, not cosmetic, because replacing it takes time and skill. A mainstream historical fact is that most clothing in 1789, America, was either homemade or made locally by tailor. Ready, made clothing exists in limited form, but it is not yet common. This means fit is approximate. Sleeves are a little too long or too short. Waistlines are forgiving. You learn to live with garments that do not quite match your body. Shoes wait by the door. They're stiff, heavy, and symmetrical, meaning there is no left or right. The shape molds to your feet over time, but until then, blisters are common. Soles are thin. You feel every stone, every frozen patch of ground. Going barefoot indoors is normal. Outdoor shoes are protection, not comfort. Hats matter more than you might expect. They protect from sun and cold, and they signal status. A felt hat, if well made, is expensive and cared for carefully. Straw hats appear in warmer months, lighter and cheaper, but less durable. Going out without a hat can mark you as careless or poor. You reach for yours automatically. Clothing also reveals gendered expectations. Women's garments restrict movement by design. Stays an early form of corset shape, the torso and support posture, but they also limit bending and deep breathing. Men's clothing allows slightly more freedom, but still prioritizes durability over ease. Everyone dresses for labor, even if their labor is social rather than physical. A quirky and slightly unsettling detail from the era is that clothing often passes through many lives. A coat might belong first to a wealthy owner, then be altered for a servant, then cut down for a child, and finally turned into rags. Those rags might later be sold to paper makers. You are wearing someone else's past without knowing it. Color is muted. Bright dyes exist, but they are expensive and fade quickly. Blues, browns, greys, and dull reds dominate. Clothing is often stained despite efforts to keep it clean. Soap removes only so much. Sunlight does the rest. You smell faintly of smoke and wool and whatever work you did yesterday. Everyone else smells similar. No one comments on it. Laundry is its own ordeal. Water must be fetched. Fires must be lit. Clothes are scrubbed against boards, boiled, wrung out by hand. In winter, washing risks freezing fingers and stiff garments. Many families delay washing as long as possible. Clean does not mean fresh. It means acceptable. You think briefly about fashion because it does exist here. Especially in cities, styles from Europe arrive slowly through ships and magazines. Wealthy Americans try to imitate them with mixed success. But even fashion bows to practicality. Hemlines rise slightly to avoid mud. Fabrics grow heavier for travel. Trends move at the speed of sail. Historians still debate how much ordinary people cared about fashion versus how much they simply accepted what was available from where you stand. It feels like a mix of both. You want to look respectable. You also need to get through the day without ruining your only good coat. You adjust your clothing one last time. A belt or tie secures loose fabric. Pockets are rare, so you carry items in small bags or tucked folds. You feel slightly encumbered, wrapped, contained. Your body is not meant to move quickly or freely. It is meant to last. Stepping outside fully now, you feel how clothing mediates your relationship with the world. The cold bites less sharply. The sun presses, but does not burn immediately. Rain, when it comes, soaks in, slowly making wool heavy and uncomfortable. There is no waterproofing beyond oiling and hope. A fringe belief from the period holds that certain fabrics could influence health or temperament. Wool was thought to keep the body balanced. Linen was associated with cleanliness and morality. Whether believed or not, these ideas shape habits and preferences. As you walk, you become aware of how everyone around you looks similarly layered, similarly constrained. Individuality exists in posture and movement, in small repairs and alterations. A patch here, a darned elbow there. Clothing tells quiet stories if you know how to read them. The day is still young, and already your clothes are working for you and against you at the same time. They protect you from the elements, but they also remind you of limits, of cost, of effort, of a world where nothing is disposable. And as you take your next step, feeling leather creak and wool shift, you carry with you the understanding that even getting dressed in 1789 is an act of endurance repeated every morning without applause. Morning is fully taken hold now, and your stomach reminds you that survival runs on fuel. Breakfast in 1789 is not a leisurely ritual. It is preparation. It is about putting something inside you before the long hours ahead begin to drain it away. You move back toward the hearth, where the fire is either coaxed back to life or already glowing softly, depending on how the night ended. Food is simple, repetitive, and deeply tied to what is available locally. Most households rely on what they produce themselves or can acquire nearby. Imported goods exist, but they are expensive and unreliable. What you eat today likely resembles what you ate yesterday and what you will eat tomorrow. Variety is not expected. Consistency is comfort. Corn dominates the table. Maize is one of the great staples of early American life, adopted from indigenous agriculture and adapted everywhere. You grind it into meal or flour, often by hand using a mortar and pestle, or a shared mill if one exists nearby. Cornmeal becomes porridge known as mush, or baked into simple cakes. It fills your stomach and provides energy even if it lacks excitement. Alongside it, there might be bread made from wheat or rye. If you are lucky, more often dense and dark than light and airy. Yeast is unpredictable, and ovens are temperamental. Baking is an art learned through failure. Burnt crusts and undercooked centers are common. Still, bread is precious. Every crumb matters. One well-established reality of the period is that breakfast is often the largest meal before evening. Midday eating is inconsistent and depends on work demands. You eat now, because you can and because later you might not have the chance. There is no snacking culture. Food appears at set moments and disappears just as quickly. You sit or stand or perch on a bench. Plates are few, bowls are shared. Utensils are basic, spoons are common. Forks are still gaining acceptance and are sometimes viewed as unnecessary or overly fancy. You eat carefully, not because the food is delicate, but because spilling wastes effort. There may be milk if you have access to a cow or goat. It is fresh and warm, not chilled. Milk spoils quickly, so it is often turned into butter or cheese as soon as possible. Butter appears at breakfast when available, spread thinly. Because it takes significant labor to produce, each pat represents hours of churning. Meat at breakfast is rare for many households, but not unheard of. Salted pork or bacon might be fried if supplies allow. The smell fills the room, smoky and rich, clinging to hair and clothes. Meat is preserved through salting, smoking, or drying, and it carries a strong flavor as a result. Fresh meat is more likely after a successful hunt or slaughter, not as a daily expectation. An unexpected detail recorded in household journals is that some families ate leftover dinner foods cold in the morning, including stews or vegetables. Reheating takes fuel, and fuel costs time and effort. Cold food is not strange, it is practical. You drink something with your meal, but it is probably not plain water. Water sources are unreliable and often contaminated. Instead, you sip small beer cider or diluted spirits. These drinks are safer because fermentation kills many harmful organisms. Even children consume weak alcoholic beverages regularly. Intoxication is not the goal. Hydration is. There is ongoing disagreement among researchers about how much alcohol early Americans actually consumed versus how much has been exaggerated by later observers. From your perspective here, it feels normalized rather than indulgent. It is simply what is available. Conversation, if it happens, is minimal. Mornings are quiet. Energy is conserved. Words are saved for later. You listen to the scrape of spoons, the crackle of the fire, the distant sounds of neighbors beginning their own days. The rhythm is shared across households. Everyone is eating quickly, preparing mentally for labor. Women often eat last after others are served, especially in larger households. This is not universal, but it is common enough to shape expectations. Food distribution reflects hierarchy, habit, and necessity. No one questions it aloud. It is simply how things are done. Children eat what adults eat in smaller portions. There is no separate menu. Taste preferences are irrelevant. Hunger overrides pickiness. A child who refuses food is viewed with concern, not indulgence. A lesser-known habit from the time is that some families began the day with prayer before eating, even when food was scarce. This was less about ceremony and more about grounding, faith structures, time and expectation, especially when control feels limited. You notice how quickly the meal ends. There is no lingering, bowls are cleared, scraps are saved for animals, nothing edible is thrown away. Even bones will be boiled later for broth. Waste is a moral failure in a world this tight. As you wipe your hands on a cloth that has seen better days, you feel the food settle. It is not exciting, but it is sufficient. Warmth spreads slowly, helped by the fire and the calories. This is the feeling people rely on to get them through hours of repetitive motion. Records from the period show that hunger is a constant background presence, even in relatively stable households. A bad harvest, an illness, or an injury can tip everything into scarcity quickly. Breakfast is reassuring because it is tangible proof that today, at least for now, you have enough. Outside, the sun climbs higher, work waits. The brief pause of eating is over. You rinse what needs rinsing carefully because water must be fetched again. You place items back where they belong because disorder creates friction later. Before stepping away, you take one last bite or sip. You do not know when you will eat again. That thought does not create anxiety, it creates focus. You have what you need for the moment, and with that quiet, practical satisfaction, you turn from the half-stomach warmed, body fueled, ready to spend the energy you have just taken in. With breakfast behind you, attention shifts to the most basic requirement of all. Water. It sounds simple from a modern distance, but here it is, a daily concern that never quite relaxes its grip. You reach for a bucket, feeling its familiar weight even before it is full, and step toward the source that keeps your household functioning. If you live in a town, the well might be communal, shared by dozens of families. If you are rural, it could be a shallow pit dug by hand, lined with stone or wood, vulnerable to whatever seeps into it from above. Springs are prized. Streams are used cautiously. Rainwater is collected when possible, though storage is imperfect. Every option carries risk. Accounts from the late 18th century make it clear that clean water is not guaranteed. Wells sit close to privies. Animals roam freely, runoff flows where it will. You do not fully understand bacteria, but you understand patterns. When water smells wrong, tastes strange, or makes people sick, you avoid it if you can. If you cannot, you boil it or dilute it with alcohol and hope for the best. You grip the handle of the bucket and lower it slowly. Rope fibers bite into your palm. The sound of water echoing below is reassuring and unsettling at the same time. When the bucket hits the surface, there is a dull splash. You pull it up, hand over hand, muscles already warming with effort. This is not a task you do once a day. It repeats. Cooking, washing, drinking animals all demand water. One firmly documented reality is that women and children perform most water-related labour. This work is invisible in many official records, yet it shapes daily life profoundly. Time spent fetching water is time not spent resting, learning, or doing paid work. You feel the rhythm of it now, the way it structures the day. Whether acknowledged or not, you carry the bucket carefully. Sloshing wastes effort. Spilling means another trip. In winter, water can freeze before you reach home. In summer, it grows warm and unpleasant quickly. You move with practice balance, aware of every step. An oddly human detail noted in diaries from the period is how often people complained about water quality in private writing. Even when public discussion avoided it, letters mentioned strange tastes, sickness after drinking, or the relief of finding a better source while travelling. Water is both essential and mistrusted. Inside the bucket is set near the hearth. Some water will be used immediately, some will be saved. Storage vessels are ceramic, wooden or metal, each with drawbacks. Ceramic cracks, wood leaks or grows mould, metal rusts or taints the taste. You accept these imperfections because there is no alternative. Bathing is limited by water access. A full immersion is rare. More often you wash hands, face and visible skin with a cloth. This is not laziness. It is conservation. Heating water requires fuel. Fuel requires labour. Every choice connects to another. There is persistent academic disagreement about how hygienic early Americans actually were. Some scholars argue that limited bathing led to widespread disease. Others point out that regular hand and face washing combined with frequent laundering of linen undergarments may have reduced certain risks. From your position here, hygiene feels situational, not careless. You rinse a bowl using just enough water to make it usable. Again, soap is applied sparingly. Soap itself is often homemade, produced from animal fat, and lie harsh on skin and eyes. It cleans, but it also strips. You feel your hands grow dry and cracked over time, especially in colder months. Outside, animals wait their turn. Chickens peck at damp ground where water spills. Livestock drink from troughs filled and refilled by hand. Animals drink more than people, and they do not ration politely. You learn to manage this balance early. Water is also tied to health beliefs. Many people suspect that certain waters carry illness through foul smells or unseen vapours. This idea, known later as miasma theory, shapes behaviour. You choose water sources that smell fresh. You avoid stagnant pools. You trust your senses more than explanations. A strange but well-attested belief from the era holds that running water is healthier than still water regardless of its actual cleanliness. Streams feel alive, wells feel enclosed and suspicious. Whether true or not, these perceptions guide daily decisions. You think briefly about fire again because water and fire are paired in constant tension. One sustains life, the other threatens it. Buckets serve both purposes. They hydrate, and they stand ready for disaster. In many homes, water is never fully put away, always available. In cities, water carriers sometimes sell water by the bucket, hauling it through streets for those unable to fetch it themselves. This service costs money and invites debate about fairness. Some see it as necessary labour. Others resent paying for something that should be free. The question of access lingers unresolved. Researchers continue to disagree on whether early American cities faced frequent waterborne epidemics or whether outbreaks were less common than later industrial periods. The evidence is uneven, drawn from church records, burial lists, and scattered medical notes for you. The concern is immediate and practical. Does this water make people sick or not? You lift a cup and drink carefully. The taste is earthy, sometimes metallic. You accept it. Thirst overrides preference. Your body learns what is normal here. just as it learned to accept rough fabric and cold floors. As the morning progresses, the bucket grows lighter. Draw water away piece by piece. You make a mental note to fetch more later. The well will still be there waiting unchanged by your need. Water anchors the day in repetition. Fetch, carry, use. Fetch again. It is tiring, grounding, and unavoidable. There is no illusion of endless supply. Every drop is visible. Every spill is felt. You wipe your hands already dry again and glance toward the door. Work beyond the house calls. But water remains in your awareness, a quiet responsibility humming beneath everything else. And as you step forward into the rest of the morning, you carry with you the understanding that in 1789, survival flows not just from food or shelter, but from the steady, careful management of something as simple and as uncertain as water. You step fully outside now, and the world greets you with sound before sight. Streets in 1789 do not ease themselves awake gently. They're already alive, even if the day is still young. The first thing you notice is the noise. Hooves striking packed earth, wooden wheels groaning under weight, chickens scattering, dogs barking at nothing in particular. Human voices rise and fall, carrying far because there is nothing mechanical to drown them out. If you live in a town, the street is narrow and uneven. There is no pavement as you know it, just dirt mud when it rains, dust when it dries, ruts from wagons harden into obstacles. You learn where to step to avoid twisting an ankle. In some places, planks are laid down to form raised walkways, but they are inconsistent and often slippery. You move carefully, eyes always scanning. One clearly established aspect of late 18th century towns is that they smell strongly of a life. Manure, refuse, smoke cooking food, and human waste all share the same space. There is no organized sanitation system yet. Waste is dumped into pit streets or nearby water sources. You wrinkle your nose briefly, then stop noticing. Your senses adapt quickly when they have to. Vendors announce themselves loudly. A man selling fish calls out his catch. A woman offers bread. Her voice practiced and strong, tradespeople work with doors open, letting sound spill out. Hammer on metal, saw through wood. The clatter of tools becomes a kind of music, irregular but familiar. Church bells mark time when they exist. Not every town has one, but where they do the sound carries authority. Bells announce hours, events, emergencies. They tell you when to gather, when to worry, when to pause. Time is communal here, not personal. You do not check it, you hear it. An interesting detail preserved in travel accounts is how foreign visitors often commented on the loudness of American towns compared to European ones. Without stone buildings to absorb sound, noise travels freely. Wooden structures amplify it. You feel exposed to the world in a way that feels both lively and tiring. You pass neighbors and exchange brief acknowledgements. Greetings are short, everyone is busy. Prolonged conversation happens later, if at all. There is an understanding that daylight is valuable. Words are saved the way fuel is. Animals move freely through the streets. Pigs root around looking for scraps. Horses stand tied outside shops, shifting their weight patiently. Livestock ownership is common, even within town limits. These animals are wealth, transportation, and food alone. You learn to read their moods, to avoid sudden movements, to step aside when needed. There is no concept of traffic control beyond custom and awareness. You yield when it makes sense. You assert yourself when necessary. Accidents happen, injuries are accepted as part of life. Broken bones heal poorly. Infection is always a risk. You move with caution because the consequences of carelessness are long-lasting. Scholarly opinion remains divided on how orderly early American towns actually were. Some descriptions paint them as chaotic and unruly. Others suggest a strong sense of informal regulation enforced by reputation and community pressure. Standing here, it feels like both. There is noise and movement everywhere, but there is also an unspoken rhythm guiding it. Children dart between adults already running errands or helping with small tasks. They know these streets well. Play blends into work. A child might chase a hoop one moment and carry a message the next. Childhood is not separated from the adult world, it is absorbed into it. You notice posted notices on walls or doors, handwritten announcements about meetings, lost items, goods for sale. Paper is valuable, so postings are brief and reused. News spreads by word of mouth more than print. A single conversation can carry information across town by midday. A lesser-known practice from the time is the role of town criers in some communities. These individuals walk through streets, calling out announcements, news, or official proclamations. Their voices are trained to carry. Their presence makes information public and unavoidable. When they speak, people listen. Sound also carries danger. A sudden shout, a cry of fire, the ring of a bell at the wrong time. Everyone remains alert to these signals. You cannot tune them out. Survival depends on responding quickly. You become aware of your own contribution to the noise, your footsteps, your voice when you speak, the creak of leather. In a world this quiet at night, and this loud during the day, every sound feels more personal. You are part of the environment in a way modern anonymity rarely allows. In rural areas, the soundscape shifts but does not disappear. Wind through trees, birds calling, axes striking wood, the crack of gunfire in the distance. Silence exists, but it is never empty. It carries information. A sudden absence of sound can be unsettling. There is ongoing debate among experts about whether people in this period experienced noise as stress or simply as background without mechanical repetition. Sounds vary constantly. Perhaps this variety made them easiest to tolerate. Perhaps constant alertness carried its own burden. You feel both stimulated and slightly on edge. As you walk, you sense how public life dominates here. There are few private spaces. Everything happens within earshot of someone else. Reputation matters because it is always being formed. Words spoken carry weight because they are heard. You pass the same faces often. Familiarity grows quickly, so do grudges. Community is intimate, sometimes uncomfortably so. There is little room to disappear. Your actions ripple outward. A strange but documented custom is that some towns enforce quiet hours, not by law but by social pressure. Excessive noise at night could earn public disapproval or retaliation. People protect their rest fiercely, because rest is fragile. As the morning advances, the sounds shift again. Heavy work begins. Wagons load, tools strike harder, voices deepen with effort. The day finds its volume. You pause for a moment, letting the noise wash over you. It is chaotic, alive, human. It reminds you that this new nation is not built in silence or speeches, but in the daily clatter of ordinary people moving, working, calling out to one another across uneven ground. Then you step forward again, merging into the soundscape. Another moving part in a world that announces itself loudly, unapologetically, and constantly. The sounds of the street fade slightly as you settle into work, because once labour begins, the world narrows. Your attention pulls inward toward hands, tools, and the steady demand of the task in front of you. In 1789, work is not something you leave for or return from. It is the structure of the day itself. Whether you farm, craft, cook, haul, clean, or trade, the rhythm is continuous, stretching from morning light toward dusk, with few clean breaks. If you are tied to the land, work begins with soil. Fields must be tended constantly. Crops do not wait. Weeds grow whether you feel strong or not. You bend, pull, hoe, repeat. The ground is uneven, sometimes stubborn, sometimes generous. Weather dictates your mood more than any internal feeling. A dry season brings anxiety. Too much rain brings a different kind of fear. You measure success not in profit, but in whether the harvest will last. If you practice a trade, your work is physical in a different way. A blacksmith stands near heat all day, hammering iron into useful shapes. Each strike sends vibration through arms and shoulders. A cooper shapes barrels that must fit perfectly or fail completely. A shoemaker bends over leather for hours, stitching by hand in dim light. Precision matters, but so does endurance. Fatigue leads to mistakes, and mistakes cost materials. What becomes quickly clear is that there is no fixed workday, there is no clock to punch, no concept of 8 hours and done. Work expands to fill the daylight available. When one task ends, another waits. Feeding animals, preparing tools, preparing materials for tomorrow. You stop when light fades or when your body refuses to continue. Surviving records from the period show that even Sunday rest is uneven. While religious observance discourages labour, animals still need care, and meals still need preparation. Rest exists in theory more than practice. You feel it as brief pauses rather than full stops. Your body carries evidence of this life. Calluses harden palms, joints ache early, small injuries accumulate. A cut that would be minor in another time demands attention here. Infection is unpredictable. You clean wounds as best you can and keep working, because stopping entirely is rarely an option. There is also unpaid labour everywhere, especially inside the household. Cooking, cleaning, mending childcare, preserving food, fetching supplies. This work produces no visible goods for sale, yet without it nothing else functions. It repeats daily, endlessly. Many who perform it will never see their effort recorded anywhere. One detail that often surprises modern readers is how early children are expected to contribute. By the age of 5 or 6, a child might already be responsible for small but necessary tasks, gathering kindling, watching siblings, carrying messages. Childhood blends into productivity almost without notice. The line between skilled and unskilled work is thin. Many people do a bit of everything. A farmer may also repair tools, a shopkeeper may grow food. Specialization exists, especially in cities, but versatility is valued more. You cannot rely on one skill alone to carry through hardship. There is disagreement among historians about whether people in this era experienced work as oppression or simply as life. Some argue that constant labor crushed individual freedom. Others suggest that work carried social meaning and pride, especially when it directly supported family and community. Standing here, muscles burning, it feels less philosophical. It feels necessary. Payment, when it comes, is inconsistent. Cash is scarce. Barter fills the gaps. You might be paid in goods, favours, or future promises. Debt is common and rarely comfortable. Owing someone ties you to them socially as much as financially. You remember who helped you when you needed it. You also remember who did not. Breaks are informal. You pause to wipe sweat from your face. You drink from a shared cup. You exchange a few words, then you return to work. There is no designated lunch hour. Meals fit around tasks, not the other way around. Work also defines identity. You are known by what you do. Names are followed by occupations. The baker, the carpenter, the washerwoman. This labelling brings a kind of stability. Your role tells others what to expect from you and what you might need in return. A curious observation from letters of the time is how rarely people complain openly about long hours. Hardship is acknowledged, but often without bitterness. This may reflect acceptance, or it may reflect the lack of alternatives. Complaining does not change the weather or shorten the day. Seasonal shifts change the type of labour, but not its intensity. Summer demands physical endurance. Winter brings repair work, tool-making, and indoor production. Even when fields rest, hands do not. Darkness shortens the day, but it does not create leisure. It simply reshapes effort. You notice how silence becomes part of work. Long stretches pass without conversation. Minds wander while bodies repeat familiar motions. This quiet is not empty. It allows thought, memory, and sometimes prayer. It is one of the few mental spaces available. At the same time, work binds people together. Shared labour builds familiarity. You learn the rhythms of others who work steadily, who rushes, who tires early. Cooperation is not optional. It is how large tasks get done at all. There is also an undercurrent of fear. Injury could end your ability to work. Illness could push your household into crisis. There are no safety nets waiting. Community support exists, but it has limits. You work not only to live today, but to guard against tomorrow. By afternoon, your body settles into a dull ache that becomes almost background noise. You adjust your posture. You shift weight. You keep going. Fatigue is not dramatic here. It is gradual, constant, and familiar. As light begins to angle lower, you take stock of what has been accomplished. There is no sense of completion, only progress. The work will continue tomorrow. It always does. And as you straighten slowly, tools in hand, sweat cooling on your skin, you understand something fundamental about life. In 1789, work does not frame the day, it is the day. Everything else exists in the margins around it, as work continues around you. Another layer of effort becomes the labor done by women does not announce itself with loud tools or public spaces. Yet it fills every hour just as completely. You begin to see how much of daily life rests on tasks that leave no obvious trace when finished. Inside the home, motion never really pauses while others work fields or trades. You stir pots, watch fires, soothe children, and keep an eye on everything at once. Cooking alone is not a single event. It stretches across the day. Ingredients are prepared hours in advance. Dough must be mixed and left. Meat must be tended carefully so it does not spoil. Fires must be watched constantly so they do not die or flare too high. Clothing demands ongoing attention. You mend tears before they grow. You reinforce seams under strain. You turn worn garments inside out to extend their life. Needles move in low light, often after the rest of the household is slowed. This work saves money and our resources, yet it produces nothing new, only continuation. By the late 18th century, it is widely understood that women's labour anchors household survival, even if it rarely appears in official records. Estate inventories list furniture and livestock, not the hours spent keeping them usable. Account books record purchases, not the hands that stretch them to last longer. Childcare blends seamlessly into every other task. Infants are carried while work continues. Older children hover nearby, learning by watching. Instruction is constant, but informal. You correct gently when there is time. When there is not, children adapt quickly or face consequences. Safety is learned through proximity, not protecting. One detail that surprises many modern readers is how frequently women participate in income-producing work alongside domestic duties. They take in laundry, they sell baked goods, they assist in family businesses. This income is often described as supplementary, yet without it, many households would not survive lean periods. Food preservation is a major responsibility. Drying, salting, smoking, and pickling all require precision. A mistake can ruin weeks of effort. You taste cautiously. You inspect for mold. You trust experience more than written instruction. This knowledge passes from person to person, often mother to daughter, quietly and persistently. There remains debate among scholars about how much autonomy women actually exercise within households. Some argue that domestic authority gave women meaningful control over resources. Others point out that legal and social limits constrain that power sharply. From within the routine, autonomy feels conditional. You make decisions, but within narrow boundaries. The physical toll accumulates: carrying water, lifting children, standing for long periods, kneeling by fires. Your back aches, your hands roughen, fatigue becomes familiar. There is little space to acknowledge it, because acknowledging it does not reduce the workload. Illness complicates everything. When you are sick, tasks still need doing. Others may help briefly, but roles do not reverse easily. You work through discomfort, because stopping creates problems that outlast the illness itself. Social expectations reinforce this pattern. Competence is admired. Complaints are discouraged. A capable woman is praised for keeping things running smoothly, which means her effort becomes invisible by definition. When everything works, no one asks how. An often overlooked practice from the period is communal female labour. Women gather to process food, spin yarn, or prepare for large events. These gatherings create brief spaces for conversation and shared experience. Work continues, but it is lighter when shared. Faith and moral teaching often frame this labour as duty and virtue. Patience and endurance are praised qualities. This framing provides meaning, but also normalizes imbalance. You absorb these ideas early because questioning them does not remove their weight. As the day moves forward, you notice how women's labour stitches everything together. Meals appear, clothes remain wearable, children survive to adulthood. None of this happens by accident. It happens because someone notices what needs doing before it becomes a crisis. There is also skill here refined through repetition. You judge heat by feel. You know how long fabric will last. You sense when a child is truly ill or simply tired. These skills are learned without formal training. Yet, they are complex and precise. The absence of recognition does not mean the absence of pride. Many women take satisfaction in competence in keeping households functioning despite limited resources. This pride is quiet, shared selectively, and rarely recorded. As evening approaches, the pace does not slow so much as shift. Outdoor tasks give way to indoor ones, light fades. Work continues by firelight. You sit, stand, move again. There is no clear division between productive and unproductive time. Looking around, you realize how much of history would collapse without this labor. Wars, politics, and economies depend on meals cooked, clothes mended, and children raised. Yet these contributions rarely receive names. As you move through the final tasks of the afternoon hands, busy mind steady, you carry the weight of this understanding. Daily life in 1789 does not run on speeches or documents. It runs on steady repeated work that leaves no monument behind. And as the household breathes around you, held together by effort that will never be fully seen, you continue on because stopping is not part of the design. The presence of children is constant, now woven into every space and every task. You notice how little separation exists between adult life and childhood. There is no protected bubble here, no long stretch, devoted only to learning or play. Instead, children move through the day beside you, absorbing the rhythms of work almost without instruction. From a very young age, children are expected to be useful. Not exceptional, just useful. A small pair of hands can gather sticks, carry messages, scare birds from crops or rock, a cradle with a foot while something else is being done. You do not assign these tasks formally. Children watch, imitate, and step in where they need it. By the late 1700s, most families rely on children's labor to function smoothly. This is not framed as exploitation in daily life. It is framed as training, contribution, and survival. A child who helps is praised. A child who resists is corrected, sometimes gently, sometimes not. Schooling exists, but it is irregular. Some towns maintain small schools for part of the year, often taught by a single instructor with mixed ages in one room. Attendance depends on season, family need, and cost. During planting or harvest, education pauses. Work does not. Many children never attend school at all. Reading and writing are taught at home, if taught at all. Religious instruction often takes priority over arithmetic. You learn what you need to function where you are. Advanced education is for the few, not the many. There is uncertainty among historians about how children experience this upbringing emotionally. Some evidence suggests strong family bonds and early competence. Other accounts hint at fear, exhaustion, and loss of childhood as we understand it. From inside the day, it feels normal. This is simply how life unfolds. You watch children handle tools that would alarm modern eyes, knives, axes, fire. They are taught early to respect danger rather than be shielded from it. Accidents happen when they do. The lesson is absorbed quickly. There is little margin for repeated mistakes. Play exists, but it slips in around responsibilities. A game with a hoop, a race along a fence line, singing while working. Play and labor blend together until the distinction feels artificial. Joy is not scheduled. It appears briefly and disappears again. Clothing for children mirrors adult practicality. Garments are durable, often made from worn adult clothes, altered to fit smaller bodies. There is no sense of preserving outfits for special occasions. Clothes are expected to get dirty, torn, and repaired. One detail that often surprises people today is how quickly children are expected to manage young siblings. By the time a child is 8 or 9, they may be responsible for feeding, supervising, or carrying an infant for long stretches. This responsibility is heavy, but it is normalized. Illness among children is common and deeply feared. Many do not survive to adulthood. You feel this absence in the way families avoid speaking too confidently about the future. Love exists, but it is cautious. Attachment carries risk. Medical care for children differs little from that for adults. Remedies are improvised. Treatments are harsh. Hope does much of the work. When a child recovers, gratitude is quiet and intense. When one does not, life continues because it must. Children also serve as messengers and observers. They carry news between households. They listen to conversations not meant for them and understand more than adults realize. Information spreads through them as efficiently as through adults. There is disagreement among scholars about whether early responsibility made children more resilient or simply burdened them early. Likely it did both. You see competence grow quickly, but you also see fatigue settle into young shoulders. As the day moves on, children grow quieter, their energy spent on tasks rather than structured play. They sit near adults watching hands work, learning without being told that they are learning. At night, children sleep deeply, often piled together for warmth. Dreams come easily to bodies that have been used fully. There is little time for restlessness when days are this full. Looking at them now, you understand that childhood in 1789 is not a separate chapter of life. It is the opening paragraph of labour, responsibility, and adaptation. It prepares you not for possibility, but for endurance. And as you move through the rest of the day, children at your side or just ahead of you, you carry the quiet knowledge that in this world growing up does not wait. It happens alongside everything else, one small task at a time. As the day carries on, there is a presence woven through ordinary life that you cannot ignore, even when no one names it directly. Enslaved people are everywhere, shaping the comfort rhythm and stability of households, towns, and farms. Their labour underpins much of what you have already experienced today, from the food on the table to the clothes on your back. If you live in the southern states, slavery is unmistakable. Fields stretch wide with crops that demand constant tending, tobacco, rice, indigo, and other labour. Intensive plants rely on enslaved hands from planting through harvest. You see people working from early light to dusk. Bodies bent, movements efficient, because inefficiency is punished. Overseers watch closely. Time belongs to someone else here. Even in northern towns where slavery is less visible, or already being questioned, enslaved people still cook meals, clean homes, haul goods, and care for children. They move through the same streets you walked earlier, often carrying more weight and receiving less acknowledgement. Their presence is ordinary to those who benefit from it, and heavy to those who endure it. Daily interactions blur into routine. Orders are given casually. Labour is expected automatically. Resistance when it happens is quiet and risky. Small acts like slowing pace, breaking tools, or feigning illness become forms of control over one's own body. You notice these moments if you look closely, though many choose not to. Enslaved people live close to those who claim ownership over them, yet remain socially distant. They sleep in separate quarters when possible, sometimes in kitchens, attics, or outbuildings. Privacy is scarce. Family life exists but is fragile, always subject to disruption through sale or reassignment. Conversations are guarded, trust is selective. You sense how deeply this system shapes everyday habits. Meals arrive on time because someone else ensures it. Laundry appears clean because someone else scrubs it. Children are supervised because someone else watches them. This labour fades into the background, making it easier for those benefiting from it to imagine life is naturally ordered rather than deliberately constructed. Punishment is not always loud, but it is always present. The threat alone enforces obedience. Physical violence exists, but so do subtler forms of control, like withholding food, separating families, or denying rest. Fear becomes part of the atmosphere, something you breathe without seeing. At the same time, enslaved people build communities of their own within narrow confines. Songs pass between fields. Stories are shared quietly at night. Traditions survive through memory, rather than permission. These moments of connection sustain identity where autonomy is denied. In some households, enslaved people hold specialized roles that grant limited leverage. A skilled cook, carpenter, or driver may receive slightly better treatment because their abilities are valued. This does not erase the imbalance, it simply reshapes it. Favor is conditional and can vanish without warning. In 1789, conversations about liberty and freedom circulate loudly among white Americans. You hear them in taverns, churches, and public gatherings. These words coexist uncomfortably with the reality unfolding around you. The contradiction is rarely confronted directly in daily life. It sits unresolved, pushed aside by habit and convenience. You notice how children raised in these households absorb the system early. They learn who gives orders and who receives them. They mimic language and behavior without understanding its full weight. Normalization happens quietly, generation by generation. For enslaved people, time feels different. Days stretch long. The future is uncertain. Planning becomes cautious and short-term. Hope exists, but it is guarded. Survival depends on reading moods, anticipating demands, and preserving strength where possible. There are moments when the structure cracks slightly. Someone learns to read in secret. Someone escapes briefly. Someone negotiates better conditions through leverage or persuasion. These moments are rare and dangerous, but they matter deeply. They remind you that even under extreme constraint, agency flickers. You also become aware of silence. Enslaved people speak less freely in the presence of others. Expressions are measured, emotion is contained. This restraint is not absence of feeling. It is protection. Words can travel faster than intentions. As evening approaches, labor does not necessarily slow. Tasks shift. Fires must be tended, animals fed, tools stored. Enslaved people often finish their work after others rest. Fatigue settles deeply, but rest is never guaranteed. The system shapes everyone it touches. Those who rely on it grow accustomed to unearned ease. Those trapped within it develop resilience and strategies for survival. Daily life continues because it must, even when built on suffering. Walking through this world, you cannot separate ordinary routine from extraordinary injustice. They exist together, tightly bound. Meals taste the same. Streets sound the same, yet beneath it all lives a being constrained, redirected and consumed. As night nears, the presence of slavery does not fade. It simply becomes less visible to those who choose not to look. For others, it remains constant, shaping every choice, every movement, every breath. You carry this awareness forward, heavy and unavoidable understanding that everyday life in 1789 is not just about how people live, but about who is allowed to live freely at all. Moving through the same streets and fields, you begin to notice lives that sit in an uneasy middle space. Free black Americans live and work alongside everyone else, yet their freedom is narrow, conditional, and constantly tested. You see it in the way they walk, alert but restrained, and in how they choose their words carefully in public spaces. Freedom here does not mean safety. It means paperwork proof of status is carried mentally at all times, and sometimes physically in the form of certificates or letters. Losing those documents can be dangerous. Being unable to produce them when challenged can turn an ordinary day into a crisis. You feel the tension in routine encounters, especially with officials or strangers. Many free black people live in towns rather than rural areas where anonymity offers slight protection. They work as sailors, laborers, artisans, cooks, and washerwomen. Skills matter. A person known for reliable work can carve out a fragile stability. Reputation becomes a shield, though a thin one. You notice how community forms quietly. Free black families cluster near one another when possible. Churches become anchors, offering spiritual grounding and mutual aid. These spaces allow moments of ease, laughter, and shared memory. Outside them, restraint returns quickly. Housing options are limited. Property ownership exists but is rare and often contested. Renting is more common and landlords hold power. Homes are small and crowded, similar to others you have seen. But insecurity adds another layer of stress. A dispute can mean sudden displacement with little recourse. Work opportunities exist, but ceilings appear quickly. Certain trades remain closed. Advancement stalls. Payment is often lower for the same labour. You hear polite explanations offered as fact, not insult, yet the outcome remains the same. Survival requires persistence and flexibility. Movement is possible but watched. Travelling without clear purpose or accompaniment invites suspicion. In some places, curfews restrict movement after dark. In others, informal enforcement achieves the same effect. You plan routes carefully and avoid unnecessary attention. Family life carries both strength and vulnerability. Marriages are valued, children cherished, but the threat of interference lingers, laws change from place to place, and protections are uneven. What is permitted in one town may be challenged in another. Stability depends on local tolerance rather than universal principle. You sense how knowledge becomes currency, knowing which streets to avoid, which employers are fair, which officials are hostile. Information passes quietly through conversation and observation. This awareness is learned early and maintained constantly. Education is pursued where possible. Literacy opens small doors and sharpens understanding. Some free black parents teach their children public schooling is often inaccessible or hostile. Learning becomes an act of preparation rather than ambition. You observe how faith supports endurance. Churches are not only places of worship, but centers of organization. They host meetings, distribute aid, and preserve history through oral tradition. Songs and sermons carry layered meanings, offering comfort while reinforcing resolve. Despite constraints, cultural life thrives in subtle ways. Music, food, storytelling, and shared rituals maintain identity. These expressions are shaped by African heritage and American experience, blending into something distinct and resilient. You hear it in rhythms, taste it in familiar dishes, feel it in communal gatherings. Interactions with white neighbors vary widely. Some relationships are cooperative, built on long acquaintance. Others are tense, shaped by suspicion or resentment. A single incident can undo years of relative peace. You remain aware that acceptance is conditional and reversible. Legal systems offer little protection. Courts may hear cases, but outcomes are uncertain. Testimony is weighed unevenly. Justice depends heavily on local attitudes. You learn to avoid conflict because resolution rarely favors you. As the day progresses, you notice how free black Americans must perform freedom carefully. Confidence can be mistaken for defiance. Silence can be mistaken for guilt. Every gesture is calibrated. Fatigue comes not only from work, but from constant awareness. Children grow up learning these boundaries instinctively. They watch adults navigate public spaces and imitate caution. Play is freer within trusted circles restrained elsewhere. Childhood carries an added layer of instruction about safety. Yet hope persists even if guarded opportunities arise through trade migration or alliance. Some save money with plans to relocate to more tolerant areas. Others invest deeply in community where they are. Progress is slow, uneven, and fragile, but it exists. As evening approaches, you see lights and windows and hear voices drifting from doorways. Inside these spaces, laughter sounds easier. Stories flow more freely. The weight of the outside world lifts slightly, though it never disappears entirely. Walking past, you understand that freedom here is lived rather than declared. It is practiced daily through caution, resilience, and community. It is real, but it is limited, and everyone knows it. As night settles in, free black Americans prepare for rest with the same routines as others. Fires are banked. Children are settled. Tomorrow's tasks are considered. Sleep comes, though vigilance never fully fades. You carry this awareness with you as the day closes. In 1789, freedom is not a single condition shared equally. It exists in degrees shaped by race, place, and power. And for those living in its narrow margins, ordinary life requires extraordinary steadiness. As the day continues, your awareness stretches beyond the edges of town and field toward people who have been here far longer than this new nation. Indigenous communities remain present close enough to shape daily reality, even when they are spoken of as distant or fading. You sense this presence in trade paths, place names, and the quiet knowledge that the land beneath your feet carries older stories. Native Americans are not relics here. They hunt, farm, trade, negotiate, and resist within reach of your daily routines. In some regions, you encounter them directly at markets or along roads. In others, their influence is felt through absence. Land newly cleared where villages once stood, forest thinned by unfamiliar patterns of use. Trade creates points of contact. You see furs exchanged for metal tools, cloth, or firearms. These exchanges are careful and often tense. Both sides understand the value at stake. A poor trade can damage relationships for years. Trust builds slowly and fractures easily. Language barriers complicate everything. Interpreters carry immense responsibility shaping meaning with every word. Misunderstandings are common and costly. Agreements made one day may be interpreted differently the next. Paper treaties mean little without shared expectations of what they represent. Some indigenous people adopt elements of European material culture. Metal pots replace clay ones. Wool blankets appear alongside traditional clothing. Firearms change hunting patterns. These adaptations are strategic, not surrender. Survival requires flexibility when pressure grows from all sides. At the same time, European settlers adopt indigenous knowledge constantly, often without acknowledgement. Crop varieties, hunting techniques, travel routes, and environmental understanding shape your daily survival. Corn, beans, and squash remain foundational. Without these contributions, many settlements would have failed outright. There is unease in the air when interactions occur. Encounters are polite but guarded. Everyone understands that balance is shifting. Land is the central tension. Expansion presses outward, and boundaries feel temporary. A fence erected today may be gone tomorrow, replaced by something else entirely. You hear stories told quietly about violence, displacement, and broken promises. These stories travel faster than official announcements. They shape behavior. Some settlers feel fear, others feel entitlement. Indigenous communities feel pressure closing in uneven and relentless. Daily life for Native Americans varies widely by region. Some communities remain semi-nomadic, others farm established land. Many are adapting rapidly to changing conditions imposed from outside. Traditional rhythms continue where possible, though altered by trade demands and territorial loss. Children learn skills early here too. Tracking, fishing, planting, toolmaking. Knowledge passes through observation and practice just as it does elsewhere. Elders hold authority through memory and experience guiding decisions, shaped by generations of survival. Spiritual life remains deeply tied to land. Ceremonies mark seasons, harvests, and transitions. These practices continue even as pressure grows, offering continuity where geography shifts. You sense the grounding this provides, especially in uncertain times. You notice how settlers often misunderstand indigenous silence. Quiet is interpreted as agreement or weakness, rather than deliberation. This mismatch leads to costly assumptions. Outcomes unfold slowly, but consequences linger for decades. Movement becomes increasingly restricted. Paths once travelled freely are contested. Hunting grounds shrink, access to water changes. Each alteration forces adjustment. Adaptation becomes constant, exhausting, necessary. You feel how proximity creates complexity. Neighbours rely on one another for trade and knowledge, yet fear and mistrust persist. Cooperation exists alongside conflict, neither fully disappears. As evening draws closer, smoke rises from multiple hearths, indigenous and settler alike. Meals are prepared. Stories are told. Life continues despite uncertainty pressing at every edge. You understand that everyday life in 1789, America unfolds on contested ground. The routines you follow are built at top layers of negotiation, displacement, and survival. This reality hums beneath ordinary moments, often ignored, sometimes acknowledged, never resolved. As night settles, the land itself feels watchful, holding memories far older than the new borders drawn upon it. And as you move toward rest, you carry the quiet understanding that this place has never belonged to only one people. No matter how loudly some now claim it, by the time you find yourself at the market or in the middle of an exchange, You realize how fragile the idea of money really is here. Trade feels personal, negotiated face to face, shaped as much by trust and reputation as by coins changing hands. You arrive with a sense of what you need, but not always with certainty about how coins exist, but they are scarce and varied. You might see Spanish dollars, British shillings, worn copper cents, all accepted more or less by agreement rather than law. Their value shifts depending on condition and familiarity. You weigh them in your palm, feeling how light they are compared to the effort required to earn them. Baht fills the gaps constantly. A sack of grain exchanged for tools, a few hours of labour traded for shoes. Promises stretch across weeks or months, recorded in memory rather than writing. Debt is common and uncomfortable, but also unavoidable. Everyone owes someone something, and everyone is owed in return. Markets are lively but tense. Prices change with weather harvests and rumour. A bad crop somewhere far away can ripple into your town weeks later. You hear people arguing quietly over fairness, over whether a price reflects greed or necessity. There is no referee, only community judgment. You notice how goods are displayed simply. Baskets on the ground, tables made from planks, nothing polished or theatrical. Sellers stand close to their wares, explaining quality with words and gestures. You learn to inspect carefully. Rotten produce can hide beneath good fruit. Flour may contain grit. Trust, once broken, is slow to rebuild. Women play a visible role here. They sell eggs, buttercloth, and prepared foods. Their earnings help household survival in times. This work blurs lines between domestic labour and commerce. The market becomes an extension of the home rather than a separate sphere. You overhear conversations about shortages. Salt is hard to come by this season. Iron costs more than it used to. Sugar is rare and treated like a luxury. These complaints are practical, not dramatic. People adapt quickly, substituting where they can. One small detail catches your attention. People often bring their own containers, jars, sacks, cloth bundles. Packaging is not provided. Waste is not assumed. Everything that enters the market is meant to leave again with purpose. Disputes arise occasionally. A measure seems short. A weight feels off. When this happens nearby, sellers and buyers pay attention. Reputation is currency here. Being labelled dishonest can end your ability to trade effectively. Social pressure enforces fairness more reliably than formal law. Travelling merchants pass through, sometimes bringing goods from distant places. Their arrival draws curiosity and caution. Exotic items attract attention, but prices are high. You weigh desire against practicality. A bright fabric or unfamiliar spice tempts briefly, then reality intervenes. Information spreads through the market as efficiently as goods. News of births, deaths, disputes, and opportunities travels from stall to stall. You listen while pretending not to. Knowledge gained here shapes decisions later. As the exchange ends, you count what you have left. Maybe fewer coins, maybe more goods. Satisfaction depends not on abundance, but on whether today's trade moved you closer to stability. Enough flour to last the week, enough tools to finish repairs, enough credit to survive until the next opportunity. You leave the market aware of how exposed this system feels. A bad season, a broken relationship, a lost reputation, any one of these could unravel what you have built. There is no safety net waiting quietly in the background. Walking away goods tucked under your arm or balanced carefully, you feel the weight of every decision made here. Trade is not abstract. It feeds you or fails you directly. And as you return to your daily path, you understand that in 1789, economics is not a distant concept debated in halls. It is lived out in muddy marketplaces measured in trust necessity and the thin margin between enough and not enough. As afternoon stretches on, you begin to feel the slow pace at which information moves through this world. News does not arrive in bursts or alerts. It drifts. It seeps in through conversation, through letters carried by hand, through travellers who bring stories shaped by distance and retelling. You live with partial knowledge most of the time, and you learn to be comfortable with that. If you are lucky, a newspaper reaches your town once or twice a week. It is small, dense with text, and read by many more people than it was printed for. One copy might pass through dozens of hands, read aloud in taverns or at kitchen tables. By the time it reaches you, corners are soft, ink smudged, and yesterday's news already feels old. What you read is selective. Editors choose what fits the page and their interests. Local events dominate. Distant happenings appear compressed, stripped of nuance. A war, a treaty, a disaster might be summarized in a few lines. You fill in the rest with imagination and rumour. Letters feel more personal, but are slower still. Writing takes time. Delivery takes longer. Weeks pass between sending and receiving. By the time a reply arrives, circumstances may have changed completely. You learn to write carefully, knowing your words will travel without you to explain them. You wait often for confirmation, for answers, for reassurance. Waiting becomes part of life rather than an interruption. Anxiety stretches out, then settles into something manageable. You cannot refresh for updates, so you adapt. Public announcements fill some gaps. Notices nailed to doors or read aloud by officials. Church gatherings spread information quickly within a community. After services, people linger, not just for fellowship, but to exchange news. This is how you learn who is ill, who has died, who plans to move on. Stories shift as they move. Details change. Motives blur. A single event can grow larger or smaller depending on who tells it. You listen to multiple versions before forming an opinion. Truth feels like something approximated rather than pinned down. You become skilled at reading tone. A pause before speaking, a lowered voice, a glance exchanged. These signals tell you as much as words do. Information lives in body language as travelers are treated with interest and caution. They bring news, but also uncertainty. You ask questions, carefully aware that what you hear may be outdated or exaggerated. Still, these accounts widen your sense of the world beyond your immediate surroundings. There is comfort in not knowing everything. Worry stays local. Problems far away feel distant enough to remain abstract. When danger does arrive, it often feels sudden. But until then, life continues without constant anticipation. As the afternoon light shifts, you realize how much mental space is freed by this slower flow of information. Your attention remains on what is near and immediate. The field, the house, the people you can see. You tuck away what you have heard today, unsure which pieces will matter later. Some will fade, some will resurface unexpectedly. Memory does part of the work that constant updates would otherwise do, and as the day moves toward evening, you accept that in 1789, knowledge arrives when it arrives. You wait, you listen, you adjust. Life moves forward, not with certainty, but with patience shaped by distance and time. As daylight begins its slow descent, attention turns towards something that quietly orders the week and gives shape to time itself. Faith is not confined to a single hour or building. It spreads through routines, language, and expectations, touching even those who question it privately. You feel its presence not as a demand, but as a constant hum beneath daily life. Church buildings vary widely. Some are solid and familiar, standing at the center of town. Others are simple meeting houses, undecorated and practical. In rural areas, gatherings may take place in homes or open spaces. Wherever it happens, attendance is more than a spiritual choice. It is a social anchor. Absence is noticed. Presence is remembered. Services are long by modern standards. Sermons stretch on dents with instruction and moral guidance. Benches are hard. Rooms are unheated in winter. You shift, often trying to stay attentive. Children fidget, quietly corrected with a glance or a hand on a shoulder. Endurance becomes part of devotion. The language used here shapes how people understand their lives. Hardship is framed as testing. Success is framed as blessing. Patience, humility, and obedience are praised virtues. These ideas offer comfort, but they also reinforce acceptance of inequality and struggle. You absorb them gradually, often without realizing it. Prayer appears throughout the day, not only in formal settings before meals, at the start of work, in moments of fear or illness. These small pauses create rhythm. They also offer a sense of control in a world that rarely feels predictable. Different denominations coexist, sometimes peacefully, sometimes not. Beliefs vary, but expectations remain similar. Public morality matters. Reputation is tied to perceived virtue. Behavior outside church walls reflects back on standing within them. Music carries faith into memory. Hymns are sung without instruments or with simple accompaniment. Voices blend imperfectly. Melodies repeat week after week, embedding themselves deeply. You find yourself humming them during work, their words offering structure when thoughts wander. Religious instruction shapes childhood early. Stories from scripture become moral lessons. Right and wrong are framed clearly. Ambiguity is discouraged. Children learn not just belief, but behavior reinforced by community observation. Church also functions as a network of support. When illness strikes or crops fail, aid may come through these connections. Assistance is not guaranteed, but belonging increases the chances. Charity exists, though often tied to judgment about worthiness. You notice how faith intersects with authority. Ministers hold influence beyond the pulpit. Their opinions shape local decisions. Disagreements with them carry consequences. At the same time, they depend on their congregations for support, creating a delicate balance. Quiet doubt exists. Some listen without full conviction. Others attend out of habit or pressure. Open skepticism is rare and risky. Questions are often kept private, shared only with trusted friends, if at all. As evening approaches, church bells may ring again, marking time rather than calling worship. The sound settles over the town, familiar and steady. It signals closure of the day, a reminder to slow down. You carry these rhythms with you as you return home. Faith has not demanded your full attention today, yet it has shaped your choices, language, and expectations. It has offered meaning where certainty is scarce. And as the light fades, you feel how belief in 1789 is less about sudden revelation and more about repetition. It settles in through habit community and the quiet reassurance that whatever tomorrow brings it fits within a larger order, even if that order remains unseen. As the afternoon settles into your body, you become aware of how fragile health feels in this world. Every ache carries weight, every cough invites concern. Illness is not an interruption to life here. It is a constant possibility, hovering quietly in the background of even the most ordinary days. They are doctors, but they are few and unevenly trained. Some have studied formally in Europe or apprenticed under established practitioners. Others have learned through experience, observation, and confidence. Seeing one costs money, time, and hope, and none of those guarantees improvement. You do not call for help lightly. Most care happens at home. You learn remedies passed down through family and neighbours, teas brewed from herbs gathered nearby, picuses made from plants, animal fat or clay, warm compresses rest when it can be afforded. These treatments are applied with care and intention, even when their effectiveness is uncertain. The body is understood differently here. Illness is often thought to result from imbalance, too much heat, too much cold, stagnation, corruption. Treatments aim to restore harmony rather than target a specific cause. You bleed to release pressure. You purge to cleanse. You sweat to drive sickness out. The process is uncomfortable, sometimes frightening, but familiar. Pain is accepted as part of healing. Procedures are done without anesthesia beyond alcohol or physical restraint. Teeth are pulled quickly. Wounds are stitched by hand. You brace yourself and endure because waiting often makes things worse. Childbirth is especially dangerous. Most births happen at home attended by women with practical experience rather than formal training. Many survive, many do not. Each birth carries risk, and each successful delivery is greeted with relief more than celebration. You understand how thin the line is between joy and loss. Children fall ill often. Fevers come and go. Some pass quickly. Others linger. You learn not to panic at every symptom, but you also learn to watch closely. A sudden change in breathing, a rash spreading too fast, lethargy that does not lift. These signs sharpen your attention. You notice how smell becomes diagnostic. Sweet breath, sour sweat, rotting wounds. Without instrument, Senses do the work, touch, sight, and smell guide decisions. Experience teaches what to fear and what to tolerate. Injuries from work are common: splinters, cuts, crushed fingers, twisted joints. You treat them as best you can and keep going. Stopping work entirely is rarely an option. Healing happens alongside labor, not in isolation from it. Mental strain has no name here, but it is present grief, anxiety, exhaustion. These are carried quietly. You talk less about feelings and more about symptoms. Trouble sleeping, loss of appetite, fatigue. The language of the body stands in for the language of the mind. You notice how communities respond to illness. Neighbors bring food. They take over chores briefly. They offer advice whether asked or not. This support matters, but it has limits. Extended illness strains goodwill. Resources are finite. Recovery is expected. There is fear around certain diseases. Smallocks leave scars and memory. Fevers sweep through towns, taking some and sparing others without explanation. Quarantine is crude and inconsistent. People isolate when they can. When they cannot, they hope. You also see how survival breeds resilience. People recover from things that would alarm you. Broken bones heal, crooked but functional. Infections burn through and leave strength behind. Bodies adapt to hardship because they must. Faith intersects with health constantly. Illness is interpreted through meaning as much as biology. Sickness may be seen as a test, a warning, or simply part of life's burden. Prayer accompanies treatment, not as replacement, but as reinforcement. As evening approaches, you feel your own body more clearly. The dull ache in your back, the dryness in your throat, the fatigue behind your eyes. None of this feels urgent. It feels normal. You note it and continue. You understand now why prevention matters so much. Warm clothing, adequate food, clean water when possible, avoiding injury. These small choices accumulate. Health here is not about optimization. It is about avoiding catastrophe. When darkness comes, rest becomes medicine. Sleep is valued because it costs nothing and sometimes helps. You settle carefully, easing sore muscles into place. You hope tomorrow brings strength rather than weakness. And as you lie, still listening to the house settle around you, you accept a quiet truth. In 1789, health is not guaranteed, not restored easily, and not taken for granted. It is managed daily through attention, endurance, and a steady willingness to face discomfort. With that understanding, you let your breath slow. The day has taken its toll, but you are still here. For now, that is enough. By the time your body begins to feel the long pull of evening thoughts, turn back to food again. Not because you are hungry yet, but because tomorrow always waits just beyond the next meal. Eating is never only about the present. It is about preparation, planning, and quiet worry over what might come next. Food preservation shapes much of what you do now. Fresh ingredients are fleeting. Meat spoils quickly. Vegetables wilt. Milk turns. If something is not eaten immediately, it must be transformed or it will be lost. You move with intention, aware that mistakes echo forward into lean days. Salt is one of your most valued tools. You rub it into meat, carefully, drawing out moisture, slowing decay. Salted pork hangs in storage, dense and sharp, smelling a promise of calories later, even if flavor fades. You accept the trade. Taste is secondary to survival. Smoking food fills the air with a deep, lingering scent. Fish meat and sometimes cheese absorb it slowly over days. Fires are kept low and steady. Too much heat ruins everything. Too little invites rot. You check often, adjusting by instinct rather than measurement. Drying works when weather allows. Fruits laid out in thin slices. Herbs bundled and hung near the ceiling. Air moves through the house, carrying plant scents that mix with smoke and wool. Drying is quiet work, patient and watchful. Pickling offers another path. Vinegar stings your nose as you pour it over vegetables packed tightly in jars. Spices are added sparingly. Lids are sealed as well as you know how. You store the jars carefully, hoping they hold through the season. Grain storage brings its own concerns. Moisture invites mold. Rodents find ways no matter how careful you are. You elevate sacks when possible. You inspect regularly. A ruined supply can mean hunger months later. There is no exact science guiding these efforts. Knowledge comes from experience and shared advice. You remember what failed last year. You repeat what worked. Each household develops its own rhythms and habits. Children learn these tasks early. They help slice, stir, carry, and watch. Mistakes are corrected gently at first, more firmly later. These skills matter. Knowing how to preserve food is knowing how to keep a household alive. As evening deepens, you feel the weight of responsibility settle in. Food on the table tonight feels comforting, but food stored safely feels reassuring. The difference between the two is effort done now rather than later. You also notice how food preservation ties families to seasons. Summer abundance is captured and stretched into winter. Scarcity is anticipated long before it arrives. Meals months from now depend on choices made in moments like this. You work slowly, deliberately. Rushing invites error. You wipe your hands. You check seals. You hang another bundle. Each small action carries quiet importance. When you finally step back, the space around you looks fuller. Not abundant, but prepared. Shelves hold jars. Hooks hold bundles. The future feels slightly less threatening. As night approaches, the fire burns lower. The work of preservation pauses. But it is never truly finished. Tomorrow will bring more. It always does. And as you settle into the evening, you feel a cautious satisfaction. You have pushed back against uncertainty just a little. In 1789, that is often the best victory available when the need arises to go somewhere beyond your usual path. You feel it immediately in your body. Travel in 1789 is not casual. It is an undertaking that demands time, strength. Even short distances carry weight. You do not leave lightly, because leaving disrupts routines that keep everything else functioning. Most movement happens on foot. Roads, where they exist at all, are uneven tracks carved by repeated use, rather than careful planning. Mud clings to shoes in wet weather, dust coats everything when it is dry. Stones shift underfoot. You learn to watch the ground as much as the horizon. If you are fortunate enough to ride a horse, travel becomes faster but not easier. Saddles rub. Muscles ache from holding posture. Horses require care, rest, and food. A lame animal strands you far from help. You remain alert, adjusting pace constantly. Wagons creak along slowly, their wooden wheels protesting every rut. Loads must be balanced carefully. Too much weight breaks axles. Too little wastes effort. You walk beside them, often guiding animals, steadying cargo, pushing when the road rises. Distance is measured differently here. A few miles can take hours. Weather reshapes plans without warning. Rain turns roads into traps. Snow blocks paths entirely. Rivers swell and refuse passage. You learn to read the sky and respect it. Travel exposes you to strangers and unfamiliar places. Inns offer shelter when available, but they vary widely. Some are welcoming and clean enough. Others are crowded and uncomfortable. You share rooms with people you've never met. Sleep lightly and guard your belongings. Food on the road is basic. Bread, cheese, dried meat when available. Fresh meals are rare. Water sources are uncertain. You drink cautiously. Hunger and thirst become companions rather than emergencies. News travels with you. People ask where you've been and what you have seen. You share what you know, aware that your words will continue on after you leave. Information spreads through movement as much as print. There is danger in travel, though, not always dramatic. Accidents happen quietly. A fall, a twisted ankle, a broken wheel far from assistance. You learn to carry simple tools and supplies, because help may be distant. Night travel is avoided when possible. Darkness hides obstacles and invites fear. When forced to continue, you move slowly, guided by moonlight and familiarity. Every sound feels amplified. You listen carefully. Travel also reshapes perspective. Seeing other towns and farms reveals differences in habit, speech, and custom. You notice what feels familiar and what does not. These observations settle into memory, widening your understanding of the world. Returning home brings relief. Familiar paths feel safer even when they're no better maintained. The sight of your own door steadies you. Travel reminds you how much effort daily stability requires. As you unload and tend to animals, muscles sore and patience thin, you recognize how movement defines limits. Here the world is not small, but it is slow. Every journey costs something, and as you rest, you understand that in 1789, travel is not about freedom or escape. It is about necessity. You go because you must, you endure because there is no alternative, and you return changed, carrying the weight of distance in your bones. As afternoon slides toward evening, you become aware of how order is maintained around you, not through distant institutions but through proximity. Law in 1789 is close, personal, and uneven. It lives in faces you recognize, voices, you know, and consequences that arrive quickly rather than formally. There is no clear separation between authority and community. The people responsible for enforcing rules are often your neighbours. A constable may also be a farmer. A justice of the peace might live down the road. This closeness shapes behaviour. You mind your actions not only because of punishment, but because reputation lingers long after an incident ends. Rules are not written down in places you consult daily. They are learned through observation and correction. You know what is acceptable because you have seen what happens when someone crosses a line, a loud argument, a public rebuke, a fine paid reluctantly. These moments teach more effectively than any posted notice. Disputes are common, boundaries blur, animals wander, tools go missing, promises are misunderstood. When conflicts arise, they're handled quickly, often before they grow. Mediation happens around tables in yards or at taverns. Elders and respected figures weigh in solutions, aim for restoration rather than abstraction. Formal courts exist, but reaching them takes time and resources. Many matters are settled locally to avoid escalation. When a case does go further, travel is required, witnesses must be gathered, and outcomes are uncertain. This process discourages frequent use. Justice here is practical, not ideal. Punishments are visible, fines are paid publicly. Time in the stocks humiliates more than it hurts. Shame carries weight. Being watched is part of enforcement. You feel it when you walk past familiar faces. Approval and disapproval are powerful tools. Serious crimes disrupt everything. Theft, assault, or worse, create tension that ripples outward. Communities respond quickly, sometimes harshly. Fear sharpens judgment. Mercy becomes harder to access. You sense how fragile order feels when trust breaks down. Jails are basic holding spaces, not places of long-term confinement. They're uncomfortable, cold, and unsanitary. Staying there is meant to be deterrent enough. Long sentences are rare. Removal from the community carries its own risks. You notice how uneven enforcement can be. Status matters. Connections matter. Someone with family support may receive leniency. Someone without it may not. Justice bends subtly around social standing, even when rules appear neutral. Women, children, and marginalized people experience this system differently. Their voices carry less weight. Complaints may be dismissed or reframed. Silence becomes a strategy for safety. You learn when speaking up helps and when it harms. Property is central to many disputes. Land boundaries are contested. Ownership papers are vague. Memory fills gaps where documentation fails. Arguments hinge on who remembers what, and whose memory carries authority. Alcohol complicates matters. Taverns serve as social centres and flashpoints. Disagreements escalate more quickly there. At the same time, taverns provide neutral ground for negotiation. You see both sides play out within the same walls. Punishment is often swift, but forgiveness exists too. Apologies matter. Making amends publicly can restore standing. Community memory is long but not fixed. People are allowed to return if they show effort. As evening approaches, you sense the quiet enforcement of curfews, formal or informal. Noise drops, movement slows. Those out late draw attention. Order tightens as darkness falls. You reflect on how law here feels less like a system and more like it requires constant maintenance. It depends on participation. When people disengage it at phrase walking home, you feel a subtle pressure of expectation guiding your steps. You act not just for yourself, but with awareness of how actions echo outward. This is how stability holds. And as night nears, you understand that justice in 1789 is not distant or impartial. It is immediate, human, and shaped by the people standing closest to it. You live within it, navigate it, and help sustain it simply by continuing to belong. As evening settles, further conversations drift toward matters larger than the day itself. Politics exists here, but not as spectacle or constant argument. It appears in fragments woven into daily concerns, surfacing briefly before slipping back beneath more urgent needs. You hear it in passing remarks rather than speeches. The new constitution is still fresh, discussed with a mix of curiosity and distance. Its words feel abstract compared to the weight of food, weather, and work. You know it exists, you know it matters, but it does not tell you how to mend a fence or stretch a meal. For many, its impact remains theoretical. Talk of government usually happens in taverns, after work when bodies are tired and tongues loosen. Opinions are shared cautiously at first. You listen more than you speak. Measuring the room, politics is personal here. Disagreement can linger beyond the conversation and affect future cooperation. Voting rights are limited. Participation depends on property status and location. Many people are excluded without much discussion. Those who can vote treat it as duty mixed with burden. Travelling to vote takes time away from work. Decisions feel important but distant. You notice how local issues dominate. Taxes, road maintenance, militia service. These matters touch daily life directly. National debates feel far away, filtered through rumour and incomplete information. You care most about what affects your household tomorrow. Printed pamphlets circulate occasionally dense with argument and conviction. They are read aloud, debated briefly, then set aside. Strong opinions exist, but they compete with exhaustion. After a long day, energy for abstract ideals is limited. There is pride in independence, especially among those who fought or supported the recent war. Stories are told with emphasis on endurance rather than ideology. Survival stands out more than victory. Freedom is remembered through hardship rather than celebration. You also sense unease. Change brings uncertainty. Old systems have fallen away, but new ones are still forming. Some worry about instability. Others fear centralized power. These concerns surface quietly, often framed through practical questions rather than philosophy. Politics intersects with class more than ideology. Those with land and resources speak with confidence. Those without listen carefully. Voices carry different weight depending on who speaks them. You learn whose opinions shape outcomes. As darkness deepens, political talk fades. Tomorrow's tasks reclaim attention. Arguments pause without resolution. This is not avoidance so much as prioritization. Survival demands focus. You walk away understanding that politics in 1789 is present but peripheral. It shapes the future slowly, while daily life presses urgently in the present. Ideals exist alongside exhaustion, ambition tempered by necessity. As you return home, you feel the quiet distance between governance and lived experience. Decisions made far away may matter eventually, but tonight rest matters more. And as the fire burns low, political ideas drift into the background, leaving you with the familiar concerns of shelter, food, and sleep. The nation may be new, but the rhythm of life remains stubbornly old. As the day finally loosens its grip, you feel space open for something rare: leisure. It does not arrive boldly or last long, but when it comes, you recognize it immediately. The pace softens, hands rest, conversation lingers a little longer than necessary. These moments feel earned, almost fragile, and you handle them gently. Leisure in 1789 is communal by nature. Solitude exists, but shared rest feels safer and more satisfying. You sit near others, even if no one speaks much at first. Presence itself becomes the reward. After hours of labor, being still together feels like relief. Music appears without announcement. Someone hums a familiar tune, another joins in. If there is a fiddle or flute, it comes out carefully tuned by ear. Songs are repeated, often passed from person to person until they belong to everyone. The melodies are simple, but they carry memory and emotion more effectively than words. Storytelling fills gaps where music fades. Tales of past winters, strange travellers, family legends, or exaggerated mishaps are told and retold. Accuracy matters less than connection. Laughter comes easily here, brief and warm. It does not interrupt work, it replaces it for a moment. Games surface quietly. Cards, simple dice, a board scratched into wood. Wages are small, pride is larger. Competition offers distraction rather than reward. Losing is accepted without drama because tomorrow brings other concerns. Children benefit from these pauses too. They play more freely now, voices rising slightly before being hushed. Adults watch without directing. These moments feel precious because they are not guaranteed. Food and drink often accompany leisure. Leftovers are shared, cups are passed. The warmth from alcohol loosens bodies and tongues. Care is taken not to overindulge. Tomorrow's work still waits. Excess carries consequences. Leisure also exists in small personal acts. Mending done without urgency. Sitting near the fire with no task in hand. Watching shadows move along the wall. These quiet moments recharge in ways that sleep alone cannot. You notice how quickly leisure ends. Someone remembers an unfinished chore. A child needs attention. The fire requires adjustment. The spell breaks gently without resentment. Rest here is woven into life, not separated from it. There is satisfaction in these shared pauses. They remind you that life is more than endurance. Even brief joy feels significant when days are demanding. As night deepens, voices soften, movements slow. The energy of the group settles into something calm and steady. You feel contentment without excitement, a sense of belonging without spectacle. When you finally rise, joint-stiff muscles tired again. You carry the warmth of this time with you. It lingers longer than the activity itself. And as you prepare to close the day, you understand that leisure in 1789 is not about escape. It is about connection, a brief easing of effort that makes the work bearable and the world feel just a little kinder. As evening settles in fully, you reach again for a cup, and this time it is not unusual or ceremonial. Drinking is simply part of the rhythm of life. Alcohol appears quietly woven into routine, accepted without comment. It is not reserved for celebration. It is practical, familiar, and expected. The liquid in your cup might be cider brewed from apples, harvested months ago, and stored carefully through cooler weather. It might be small beer weak enough to drink throughout the day without dulling your senses. In some households, rum or whiskey appears poured carefully and stretched as long as possible. Strength varies. Purpose does not. This is about safety and sustenance as much as comfort. Water cannot always be trusted. You know this instinctively. You have tasted the difference between clean and questionable sources. Fermented drinks feel reliable. They do not make you sick as often. Children drink them diluted. Adults sip them steadily. No one treats this as excess. It is simply how hydration works here. You notice how drinking shapes social interaction. A cup passed from hand to hand marks belonging. Refusing without reason feels awkward. Accepting creates ease. Conversation flows more freely when throats are wet and shoulders relax slightly. Taverns glow warmly. Now, light spilling from windows into the dark. Inside benches are full voices layered. Deals are discussed. News is exchanged. Disagreements flare and fade. Taverns are not escapes from daily life. They're extensions of it. Moderation matters, even if it looks different than you expect. A person who drinks too much too often gains a reputation quickly. Dependence is noticed, productivity suffers. Community tolerance has limits. You learn where those limits lie by watching others cross them. Alcohol also plays a role in medicine. Spirits are used to dull pain, preserve herbs and steady nerves. A small amount before sleep is thought to warm the body and invite rest. Whether it works or not, the ritual offers comfort. You sip slowly, feeling warmth spread through your chest. The day's labour softens slightly at the edges. Muscles ease, thoughts slow. This is not numbness, it is release. You notice how flavours differ depending on season and skill. Some brews are sharp and thin, others are rich and satisfying. Quality varies, but availability matters more. You drink what is there. Children are present in these spaces too, though their cups are weaker. They listen, observe, learn how adults speak and behave when guards lower. Lessons are absorbed quietly. As night deepens, drinking tapers naturally. There is no sense of pushing the moment longer than it should last. Tomorrow weights and bodies know their limits. You finish your cup and set it aside. There is no rush to refill. Contentment settles where effort once dominated. And as you prepare to return home, you understand that alcohol in 1789 is not about escape or indulgence. It is woven into daily survival, social connection, and simple comfort. Another ordinary element of a world that demands much and gives little freely. As the night air cools, you become more aware of the sky than you ever are in a modern city. Weather is not background here. It is an active force that shapes every decision, every plan, every hope. You step outside and feel it, the way temperature settles on your skin, the way wind carries information before it carries sound. Heat lingers in summer evenings, clinging to bodies and walls alike. Houses release warmth, slowly trapping air inside. Sleep comes restlessly during hot months. You lie still, listening to insects, waiting for relief that may or may not arrive before dawn. Sweat is unavoidable. So is discomfort. Winter brings a different kind of awareness. Cold is sharp and persistent. It creeps through seams in walls, under doors, into bones. You dress in layers, even indoors. Fires burn constantly, watched carefully. A dying fire at night is not an inconvenience, it is a threat. You wake to tend it without fully waking muscle memory guiding you. Storms command attention. Thunder carries authority. Lightning draws eyes upward. You count the seconds between flash and sound, measuring distance instinctively. Heavy rain can flood fields, wash out. Roads rot stored crops. Too little rain dries soil to dust. Balance feels fragile. Wind matters more than you might expect. It fans fires, it chills wet clothing, it carries smells that warn or reassure. A shift in wind direction can tell you more about coming weather than any instrument. You learn to read it the way others read clocks. You notice how people talk about weather constantly. Not as small talk, but as planning. Conversations open with observations about clouds, frost, humidity. These details inform decisions about planting, travel, storage, and rest. Ignoring weather carries consequences. Animals react before people do. Chickens huddle. Horses grow restless, dogs pace. You watch them closely. Their behavior offers clues you trust. Clothing and shelter work together against the elements, but neither is perfect. Rain soaks through wool eventually. Snow drifts against doors. Mud tracks inside. No matter how careful you are, you adapt rather than resist accepting dampness and cold as part of life. Weather also shapes mood. Long grey stretches wear on patience. Clear days lift spirits. You feel relief when sunlight breaks through after storms, even if work becomes harder under its glare. As night deepens, stars appear with startling clarity. Without artificial light, the sky feels vast and close at the same time. You recognize patterns. You use them for orientation and reassurance. The moon becomes companion, its phases tracked almost unconsciously. You plan around weather even in sleep. You position yourself closer to warmth. You listen for changes. You rest lightly when conditions feel uncertain. And as you stand for a moment under the open sky, you understand that in 1789, weather is not something you endure occasionally. It is a constant presence shaping comfort, danger, and possibility. You live inside it, just to it, and carry its influence into every ordinary day. Darkness arrives fully now, not softened by streetlights or glowing windows, but complete and enveloping. Once the sun disappears, the world contracts. Your circle of awareness shrinks to what firelight can touch. Everything beyond it feels distant, uncertain, and left for morning. Inside the house, flame becomes ruler of the evening. Candles are lit sparingly, their small halos of light carefully positioned to do the most work. One candle might serve an entire room. Oil lamps glow dimly, their smell faint but familiar. Shadows stretch and sway along the walls, turning ordinary objects into larger, quieter shapes. You move more slowly now. Every step is deliberate. Darkness hides hazards you know well by daylight. A misplaced stool, a low beam, a sleeping animal. You rely on memory as much as sight. Your body learns the house in 3 dimensions, counting steps, noting edges, trusting familiarity. Work continues, but it changes form. Tasks that require strength give way to those that require attention. Mending by firelight, shelling beans into a bowl, sharpening tools carefully. These jobs suit the quiet and the narrow beam of light. Conversation softens, voices lower without anyone asking. There is something about darkness that invites restraint. You speak when needed, then fall into companionable silence. Listening becomes easier. You hear the fire shift wood settling with soft cracks. You hear the house breathe. Outside the night carries its own sounds. Insects hum adderly. An owl calls. Something moves in the brush beyond the door. You listen without alarm, noting patterns. Familiar sounds reassure. Unfamiliar ones sharpen attention. Fire demands respect now more than ever. One careless spark can undo everything. You watch embers closely, you bank the fire rather than letting it roar. Water remains nearby always. This vigilance is automatic, learned through stories and loss. Light also marks time. When candles burn low, evening ends. There is no incentive to push past exhaustion. Darkness encourages rest. Sleep aligns with the natural world rather than resisting it. Children grow heavy-eyed quickly. They're guided gently to bed, settled together for warmth. Adults linger a bit longer, finishing small tasks or simply sitting, hands folded, eyes following the fire. You feel how the absence of light changes thought. Imagination wanders more easily. Memories surface. Worries grow quieter or louder depending on the day. The fire offers something to focus on, a steady point in the shifting dark. When you finally prepare to sleep, you do so carefully. Flames are reduced to safe embers. Candles are snuffed, not blown out to preserve wicks. Darkness returns gradually rather than suddenly. As you lie down, the house feels smaller and more intimate. The world beyond the walls fades. What remains is warmth, breath, and promise of morning. And as the last light disappears, you understand that night in 1789 is not something to fill with activity. It is something to yield to. Darkness closes the day, gently insisting on rest, whether you welcome it or not. As the night deepens and the house settles into stillness, you become aware of something modern life takes for granted, but this world rarely offers: privacy. It is not absent entirely, but it is scarce, fragile, and often negotiated moment by moment, rather than assumed. You share space constantly. Bodies sleep close together for warmth and necessity. Conversations carry through thin walls or open rooms. Even thoughts feel exposed when others are always within earshot. You learn to keep certain things inside, not because you are secretive, but because there is nowhere to put them safely. Bedrooms, when they exist at all, are not single-purpose sanctuaries. A room might serve as sleeping space, storage, workspace, and sick room, depending on need. Curtains or hanging cloth create partial separation, more suggestion than barrier. You change clothes, and without ceremony, modesty adapts to circumstance. At night, the sounds of others surround you, breathing, shifting, the quiet murmurs of sleep, a cough, a sigh. These noises become familiar and oddly comforting. Silence would feel strange, even alarming. Being alone is not the default state here. It must be sought deliberately. Conversations are shaped by this closeness. Sensitive topics wait for rare moments. A walk outside, a task done together away from others. Words are chosen carefully, tone matters. You learn how to say much with little privacy. Also intersects with authority. Household heads command space by default. Others yield, children are expected to listen more than speak. Guests are accommodated even when space is tight. Hospitality outweighs personal comfort. Personal belongings are few and shared often. Tools pass between hands. Clothing is borrowed and returned. Even beds are rotated depending on circumstance. Ownership feels fluid. Attachment centers more on use than possession. You notice how emotions are managed differently here. Grief is shared openly, because hiding it would require isolation that rarely exists. Joy spreads easily for the same reason. Anger is visible and therefore risky. Strong feelings ripple outward quickly. Moments alone happen early or late, or during tasks that pull you briefly away from others. Fetching water, walking to an outbuilding, sitting quietly near animals. These small pockets of solitude feel precious. You take them when they appear. Writing offers another form of privacy. Letters and journals allow thoughts to exist outside the body without being overheard. You write carefully, knowing paper is limited and discovery possible. Still, the act of writing creates a private space. No wall can provide. Sleep itself is communal. You lie close to others, warmth, shared movement felt. There is comfort in this, even if it challenges modern ideas of personal space. Vulnerability is collective rather than individual. Wealthier households enjoy more rooms, more separation, doors that close, spaces that belong to one person. These distinctions are visible and quietly resented. Space signals status as clearly as clothing or food. Children learn early that privacy is conditional. They're watched, guided, corrected openly. Secrets are difficult to keep. This creates both safety and constraint. Independence develops differently when observation is constant. As you lie awake listening to the house, you reflect on how identity forms in this environment. Selfhood is less about separation and more about role. Who you are is defined by what you do for others and how you fit within the group. There is comfort in this closeness. Loneliness is rare, support's immediate. Help arrives quickly when needed. At the same time, there is pressure, little space to withdraw, few places to hide. You adjust your position, careful not to disturb those around you. You breathe slowly, syncing unconsciously with the rhythms nearby. The house feels full alive even in rest. And as sleep approaches, you understand that in 1789, privacy is not a right. It is a luxury accessed briefly and appreciated deeply. Life is shared by default, and individuality grows not in isolation, but in constant relation to others. With that thought settling gently, you let yourself drift, surrounded by warmth, sound, and the steady presence of human closeness. Even as you lie there nearly asleep, a quiet awareness lingers at the edges of your mind. Fire, it is both comfort and threat, friend and constant worry. The same flame that warmed your meal and lit your evening holds the power to erase everything you own before dawn. You have heard the stories everyone has. A spark leaping from a hearth, a candle tipped by accident, a chimney clogged with soot catching suddenly. Fire moves fast here, faster than shouting, faster than running feet. By the time you smell it, it may already be too late. Homes are built close together in towns, wood pressed against wood. If one catches, others often follow. Buckets line up quickly when alarms are raised, hands passing water in urgent silence, hooks pull down, burning beams to stop the spread. People work together instinctively because no one survives a fire alone. In the countryside, danger feels quieter, but just as real. A single house burning means isolation rather than spectacle. Help may be far away, you rely on vigilance and routine to keep disaster at bay. Fires are banked carefully at night, candles are snuffed fully, embers are checked twice. Sometimes 3 times before sleep claims you. Possessions are few, but they matter deeply. Clothing, tools, stored food, letters. These things represent labor and memory. Losing them means starting over with empty hands. Insurance does not exist for most people. Recovery depends on neighbours and luck. You sense how this risk shapes behaviour. Children are taught early to respect flame. Play near the hearth is watched closely. Carelessness is corrected immediately. Fear does not paralyse. It instructs. Fire also dictates architecture. Hearths are built from stone when possible. Chimneys are cleaned despite the effort required. Roofs are kept clear of debris. Every precaution is a response to loss remembered or narrowly avoided. Nighttime heightens this awareness. Darkness hides early signs. Sleep dulls reaction. You learn to wake quickly, alert to unusual sounds or smells. The creak of settling wood is familiar. Anything different stands out sharply. Even now, drifting part of you listens. Fire demands attention even in rest. It is never fully trusted, yet without it life would collapse. Cold would creep in, food would spoil, darkness would dominate. You accept the balance because there is no alternative. As your breathing slows, the fire settles too. Embers glowing softly contained for now. The household's tomorrow remains possible, and a sleep finally takes you. You carry the quiet understanding shared by everyone in 1789. Survival depends not only on effort, but on constant watchfulness. Even in dreams, some part of you stays alert, guarding against the thin line between warmth and ruin. Morning feels far away now, but your mind drifts toward it anyway, carried by the quiet thoughts that surface when the body finally slows. In the spaces between sleep and wakefulness, you hear people talking softly about what might come next. Not loudly, not with certainty, just enough to keep hope alive. Dreams of improvement are modest here. No one speaks of sudden wealth or dramatic transformation. Instead, hopes are shaped around small shifts. A better harvest next year, a stronger roof before winter, enough saved to buy land, or at least to move somewhere with better soil. Progress is imagined in inches, not leaps. You hear plans whispered at the end of long days. Someone wants to add another room to the house. Someone else hopes to send a child to school for one extra season. These goals feel ambitious and fragile at the same time. They depend on weather, health, and 1,000 things beyond control. Land holds particular meaning. Owning it offers stability, independence, and status. Many work toward this, slowly saving what they can, borrowing cautiously, waiting for opportunity. Others already own land, but worry constantly about keeping it. Taxes, disputes, and bad years threaten even long-held ground. Migration is part of this dreaming. Some speak of moving west, where land is said to be more available. Stories travel about open spaces and fresh starts. They are spoken with excitement and unease. Moving means risk. Staying does too. Choosing between them is never simple. You notice how hope often attaches itself to children. Adults invest energy into the next generation, imagining a life slightly easier than their own. Skills taught patiently. Knowledge passed down carefully. The future feels safer when it can be imagined through younger eyes. There is also resignation woven into these thoughts. People know improvement is not guaranteed. Loss is common enough to temper expectation. Plans are made with flexibility, always ready to be reshaped or abandoned if circumstances shift. You sense how shared hardship creates shared dreaming. People talk together about what could be better, not to escape reality but to endure it. These conversations provide warmth, similar to the fire, something to gather around mentally when resources run low. As sleep deepens, these hopes soften into background hum. They do not demand action tonight. They simply exist, offering direction without pressure. Tomorrow will bring its own work, and as you drift further, wrapped in the quiet of the house and the steady presence of others nearby, you understand that in 1789, the future is not a promise. It is a possibility carried gently protected from disappointment by modesty and patience. With that thought settling, your breathing slows further. The world fades, leaving only the faint sense that even in a hard life, people look forward step by careful step towards something just a little better than today. Sleep does not erase the passage of time so much as soften it, and as night deepens, thoughts turn quietly toward aging. In 1789, growing old is not marked by retirement or rest. It is marked by persistence. You work as long as your body allows, and when it no longer does, you adjust rather than stop. There is no clear moment when labour ends. Tasks change shape instead. Strength gives way to knowledge. Speed gives way to caution. Older bodies move more slowly, but they remain present in daily work. You shell beans instead of lifting sacks. You watch children instead of walking long distances. Contribution adapts rather than disappears. Elders hold memory. They remember seasons of scarcity and years of plenty. They recall disputes settled long ago and mistakes not worth repeating. This memory carries weight. Advice is offered carefully, often indirectly, because authority here comes from experience rather than title. Aging bodies carry visible wear. Hands stiffen, vision dims, hearing softens, pain settles into joints and becomes familiar. These changes are accepted with practicality rather than complaint. Everyone expects them eventually. You prepare mentally long before they arrive. Care for the elderly happens within households. Parents live with children. Grandparents sleep near grandchildren. Support flows through family lines rather than institutions. When illness or frailty increases, responsibilities shift quietly. There is no formal discussion. Needs are noticed and met as best they can be. This arrangement brings closeness and strain at the same time. Space tightens, resources stretch, patience is tested, yet separation is rare. Sending someone away is not an option most can afford emotionally or materially. Older people remain involved in decisions. Their voices matter in disputes, planning, and moral guidance. Respect is shown through listening rather than ceremony. Disagreements happen, but dismissal carries. Social risk. Age commands attention even when strength fades. You notice how fear of becoming a burden lingers beneath these relationships. Elders push themselves to remain useful. They insist on helping even when tasks cost more effort. Pride and necessity blend together here. Death feels closer with age, but it is not spoken of constantly. It is acknowledged, quietly folded into planning rather than dramatized. Wills are simple, possessions few. Instructions are given without sentimentality. Practical matters come first. There is comfort in continuity. Older people see themselves in younger ones. Skills pass down live on beyond the body. This offers a sense of permanence that eases anxiety about decline. As you rest, you imagine the long arc of a life shaped by labour rather than milestones. Childhood blends into work. Work continues into age. Rest arrives gradually and incompletely. This rhythm feels steady, if demanding. And as sleep deepens again, you understand that in 1789, aging is not a withdrawal from life. It is a slower participation, guided by memory adaptation and quiet endurance. Growing old means staying connected, contributing what you can until the day you cannot. With that thought settling gently, the night carries you further into rest, held by the presence of others and the long continuity of lives lived without pause. Sometime in the night before sleep fully takes you, you find yourself half awake listening. This is a familiar state here, lying still while the world breathes around you. Night sounds travel easily through thin walls and open spaces. You do not resist them. You let them pass through your awareness. Animals announce themselves first. A horse shifts its weight and snorts softly. Chickens murmur in their roosts, somewhere farther off. A dog barks once then settles. These sounds are reassuring. They mean things are as they should be. Silence would feel wrong, a warning rather than a comfort. You hear the house itself. Wood contracts as the temperature drops. A beam cacks, answering another across the room. The floor gives a quiet sigh when someone turns in their sleep. These noises are familiar enough to register without alarm. Anything new would pull you upright instantly. Outside, insects maintain a steady rhythm. Their sound fills the dark, a soft, continuous thread that smooths the edges of thought. In colder months, wind takes their place, moving through trees, pressing against walls, carrying faint scents of earth and smoke. Voices travel at night in unexpected ways. A conversation down the road drifts through open air. words blurred into tone rather than laughter rises briefly, then fades. You imagine scenes you cannot see other households winding down, much like yours. Sleep comes in layers. You drift, surface drift again. Dreams mix with listening. Images blur into sounds and back again. The boundary between waking and resting feels thin and flexible. In these quiet moments, reflection slips in easily. You think about the day just lived. What went well? What could have gone better? These thoughts do not spiral. They arrive gently, then move on. There is no habit of replaying endlessly. Tomorrow will bring its own demands. You also think about people nearby who is ill, who is struggling, who might need help soon. Community awareness extends even into rest. Care does not fully shut off at night. The moonlight, when present, outlines shapes faintly through windows. It softens edges, turning the room into a calmer version of itself. You shift slightly, finding a position that eases pressure on tired joints. At some point, listening becomes dreaming. Sounds blend into imagined scenes. Awareness loosens its grip. The night holds you gently familiar and predictable in its patterns. And as you finally slip into deeper sleep, surrounded by the steady pulse of living things, you feel grounded. Another day has passed. Another will come. The world continues quietly, even while you rest. Sleep lightens toward morning. Not because of an alarm, but because the world itself begins to stir. Even before your eyes open, you sense the shift. The air feels different. Sounds change tone. Night loosens its hold gradually without ceremony. Someone nearby moves first, careful not to wake everyone at once. A body shifts. A blanket is adjusted. The fire is checked. Embers coax gently rather than a sow to flare. These early movements are practiced almost automatic, shaped by years of repetition outside. The sky begins to pale. Birds test the air with tentative calls. One answers another. The pattern builds slowly. Morning does not arrive all at once. It unfolds. You open your eyes and see familiar shapes softened by low light. The ceiling beams, the walls, the quiet presence of others still resting. Your body feels heavy but ready, shaped by yesterday's work and prepared to repeat it. There is no dread in this feeling, just acceptance. Another day in 1789 does not promise novelty. It promises continuity. The same tasks, the same rhythms, the same negotiations with the weather body and time. You measure life not by milestones but by days completed and nights survived. You think briefly about how ordinary this feels from the inside. No trumpets announce history. No one pauses to mark significance. Yet, this is the texture of a nation forming quietly through routine. Through meals cooked, fields worked, children raised, fires tended, days endured. As you rise carefully, joints stiff, then loosening. You recognize how life here is built from accumulation rather than transformation. Each day adds weight, experience, memory. Progress happens slowly, almost invisibly through repetition. You dress again, you prepare again, you step forward again. There is comfort in knowing what comes next, even when it is hard. Predictability becomes a kind of safety outside. The light strengthens, the sounds of morning return. Somewhere a rooster calls with more confidence. Now tools are lifted. The world resumes its familiar motion. And as you move into this new day, carrying the quiet weight of the last one, you understand something simple and grounding everyday life. In 1789 is not dramatic from moment to moment. It is demanding, communal, and persistent. It asks much, but it also offers belonging. You are part of a web of effort and care that stretches beyond you, both backward and forward. You inherit it, you contribute to it, you pass it on. The day continues, just as it always does. The pace slows now, breath lengthens, the edges of the world soften again as the story gently releases you. You no longer need to carry the weight of that day or the next one. You have walked its paths, felt its textures, and listened to its quiet truths. There is nothing left to remember actively. It can fade. Imagine the house growing still once more, the fire low and safe, the sounds familiar and steady. Imagine your body resting without effort, sinking into warmth and darkness that asks nothing from you. Let the routines dissolve, let the sounds drift farther away until they blur into a single calm presence. You are safe here. You are warm. You are allowed to rest. There is no morning you need to prepare for now. No task waiting just beyond sleep. Only the gentle permission to let go. So breathe slowly, feel the weight of the day slip off and drift. Music,